All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session today. I'm just putting some information into the chat box. So as we go through, if you have any questions or thoughts, you use the chat box or the question and answer panel. And today we're just going to get us started here. So welcome to our virtual conference, a spotlight on emotional well-being, highlighting the past, present, and future, and to our current conference session, establishing community partnerships and engaging families in school-based mental health. Today, we have Tania Leonard with us today. Tania has 20 plus years of experience identifying and connecting resources for schools, districts, and urban communities. She has a rich history of working in the mental health field and education leadership, and has also worked tirelessly with children servicing agencies at the city and state level. Tania has provided leadership, guidance, and coaching to schools, and she's supported school teams with implementing evidence-based supports, responding to behavioral health emergencies, and managing the aftermath of school and community crises. Tania is committed to providing quality services to the most vulnerable populations. So with my pleasure, I wanted to welcome and turn it over to Tania.
Thanks, Sean. Good morning, everybody. So we're going to jump right in. Today's objectives, we are going to have an opportunity to identify the core features of comprehensive school mental health. We'll review that very quickly. We'll understand the importance of family and community engagement within a comprehensive school mental health system. Consider any family and community engagement through a culturally sensitive lens, a trauma-informed lens, and we'll be able to discuss some implementation steps to creating effective school and family community partnerships and to support the mental health of students. All right. So, as we know, schools can do a lot, and they play a very critical role in supporting mental health of our youth, and they continue to represent the most common entry point for youth to receive mental health services. So, it's important that we develop strong, comprehensive school mental health systems that are key to supporting social and emotional and academic well-being for our students. I'm going to talk a little bit now about how developing a comprehensive school mental health system or framework and its core components. We're not going to tackle all aspects of a comprehensive school mental health system in this training, but we'll be able to provide a little bit of an overview about the groundwork and where it focuses on family and community partnerships. So what's a comprehensive school mental health system? It is a comprehensive school mental health system provides a full array of tiered supports and services that promote a positive school climate, social and emotional learning, and mental health and well-being while reducing the prevalence and severity of mental illness and substance abuse. Many times when people think of school mental health, they think of direct school-based services such as group or individual counseling for a relatively small group of higher needs students. And while these types of services are very critical, they represent just one piece of a larger system of tier prevention and intervention supports and programming that's designed to meet the needs of all students. Strong and effective comprehensive school mental health systems have significant benefits to students and schools more broadly, including greater academic success, reduced exclusionary discipline, improves school climate and safety. It enhances student engagement and social emotional behavior functioning, and there are higher graduation rates. So again, a comprehensive school mental health systems have 8 core features. And the first of these is the inclusion of well-trained school district staff and school professionals. And then there's family and school partnerships, which we're going to focus on today. A multi-tier system of support framework, systematic needs assessment and resource mapping, mental health screening and referrals, evidence-based and um, emerging best practices, database decision making, and diverse source of funding to which we'll talk about a little bit later today if you're going to stay with us. So today we're just going to talk a little bit about family and school community partnerships and just review our tier systems just a smidge, right? So a closer look at the MTSS framework, or the multi-tiered systems of support is a dominant framework in the field of school mental health. And many of you might be familiar with MTSS. The framework emerged from work conducted in public health, emphasizing three tiers of prevention and representing a continuum of preventative and intervention services designed to address the diverse academic and mental health needs of all students. Shown here, the three tiers represent universal or tier 1, secondary or tier 2, and tertiary tier 3 interventions. And they respond to a full range of students' needs. Interventions are layered from a universal approach serving all students, to which most students respond, to more specific and targeted interventions, and these are designed for smaller percentages of higher need students. So again, starting at tier 1, universal or primary prevention efforts are designed for all students and they include staff, and it involves strengthening social, emotional, and behavior skills. Some examples include universal screening, consistent discipline policies and procedures across the board, social emotional learning curriculum that is incorporated throughout the day, and positive school culture and climate. When we talk a little bit about tier 2 or secondary selective prevention efforts, they're designed for students who may not be responding to tier 1 or universal supports alone, and they may be at risk for developing more significant mental health concerns. So some examples of small tier 2 interventions are small group interventions, mentoring, classroom-based supports, and maybe some brief individualized strategies such as psychoeducational groups, problem-solving training, social skills training, or something, a mentoring program in the form of check-in, check-out. And then finally, we have tier 3, or the most intensive intervention efforts, which are designed to address the individualized needs of a smaller percentage of students who don't respond alone to tiers 1 or tiers 2. And a few of these interventions can look like individual, group, or family therapy, crisis counseling, individual social skills and instruction, and collaboration with community service providers. So now we've talked about what MTSS is, let's talk about what it's not. And just to make sure that nobody's confused, the MTS framework is not a prepackaged curriculum or program. It's not just for the purposes of identify students for special education or services, but it serves all students. It's not isolated to academics and behavior. It doesn't take the place of response to intervention, but it works in tandem with it. And it's not the job of a few specialists in the school, but a comprehensive team that works together to support the needs of their students. So now we'll dive in and we'll talk about the importance of family engagement and review a few strategies. So very quickly, I would like for you to take a moment to just examine your own beliefs about family engagement on a continuum, from viewing family or home and school as very separate worlds that don't intersect, to viewing family and educators as equal partners, sharing responsibility and working closely together to support students in school. At a 1, we have, some following points of views: that home and school are separate. They're very different worlds. And it's the school's responsibility to educate children and the family's responsibility to see that children are dress fed and prepared for school. And at a 10, we have schools are the responsibility of education with families. The partnership with family is flexible. On some issues, parents will be more active and partner, but on other issues, the school will be. So just think a little bit about where you lie on that spectrum, and then we'll jump in and talk a little bit more about how engagement is really, really important. But first, we'll define it. Family engagement can be conceptualized as a collaborative partnership between families, educators, and school community-based partners and providers to support and optimize the learning, development, health, and well-being of all students. So for the purposes of this training, that's how we'll define it. So as we know, family engagement is an important factor in student success. And when schools and families collaborate on identifying children's needs, goals, programs, and progress, child outcomes significantly improve. Students of family engagement show significant associations between family engagement and success for students, including higher academic success for students, improved teacher-student interactions, including improved classroom dynamics, teacher expectations, and student-teacher relationships, which is really important. There's improved school attendance and higher graduation rates, as we've already talked about. There's increased student motivation, positive attitudes towards other students, and higher self-confidence. There's enhanced social skills, a reduced emotional stress. I'm sorry. Lower substance use and greater school connections and a positive school climate. So let's look a little bit more closely around what effective family engagement looks like. So first, it is a shared responsibility. And in its partnership, schools and other community agencies and organizations are committed to engaging families in meaningful and culturally respective ways. Families are committed to actively supporting their children's learning and development and partnering with the school. And it's critical that these expectations and values around family engagement are really clearly communicated to everyone involved, from family members, including students, staff, and community partners, so we can all be on the same page about what the expectations are. And then that brings us to another aspect of effective family and engagement, and that's continuity. Oftentimes, family engagement is more emphasized at younger grades. And while the ways in which family are engaged might evolve, the engagement is still critical. It's a long-term process. It's continuous across all ages and grades, spanning pre-K to 12. Family engagement also occurs across contexts, right? So it takes place everywhere that children learn, including at home, in the school, after school programs, and in the community with other programs and activities. And lastly, effective family engagement is inclusive and strengths-based. It seeks to understand and welcome all families and build on the strengths and problem solving rather than weakness and barriers. Many family engagement initiatives, however, well-intentioned, are designed with a deficit-based lens and focusing on what families are lacking or failing to do. So it's important that we have a shift in mindset and a shift in culture to a strengths-based approach to help motivate families and educators alike. So when we approach families as collaborators with schools, they serve in many roles to support student success and the overall school culture and climate. Families are key supporters of learning and often benefit from suggested strategies or specific ways to inform, support, reinforce, or explain classroom lessons and learning. And the learning can also be social emotional in nature. It doesn't just have to be academic, right? Families are believed to be active participants in decision-making processes about students' needs, goals, programs, and progress. And they serve as leaders and models within a school community, serving as full active members of school mental health lens teams. They're advocates for their own children and can also be important voices for the diverse community within a school. As we touched on a little bit before, families are partners and shared accountability. And the expectations and responsibilities go both ways when we're talking about teaming with parents and with members of the community. It's also important to note that if we're inviting parents to serve in these roles that we give them, then the opportunities and tools to act in success in whatever roles they are. So when we're inviting them to be on teams, an MTSS team, a leadership team in the building, it's important that they have the tools that they'll be successful in the role that we're asking them to play. So that's something that we also need to consider when we're inviting them into the schools. What do our families need? What do parent volunteers need as they come into the buildings to support us? So we also need to remember that youth partnerships and student voice in family engagement needs to be elevated as well. Strong family participation, including the youth, is associated with enhanced collaborative decision making, greater family engagement overall, and positive development outcomes for students. However, direct involvement of students in shaping programs and services, including mental health priorities and programming, is an area that needs more attention both in schools and as a research priority. One more important thing to know about engaging students is to solicit and value their perspectives on youth mental health issues, including what their needs are, supports, and services to inform the development of school mental health programs and services. That's very important, just because sometimes they have information that we don't, or they definitely have a perspective that we don't as adults. Consider a student representative or possibly a youth subcommittee that should be included in school mental health teams in a meaningful capacity. And if not taking part in all aspects of the teaming, then consider how you can invite them to the table to participate and be an active member of whatever teaming process that you're choosing to use. Students might help plan or facilitate focus groups or surveys to assess student perspectives on pressing concerns, interests, facilitators, and other barriers to engagement with school mental health programming and school connectiveness more broadly. Obviously, if your representative looks like your student body or is a part of the student body, they may be able to collect information that you're looking for in a more accessible way than us as adults can. So that's important to keep in mind. And just like family engagement more generally, youth engagement is built on trust. And it needs to be established as a school-wide commitment to be most effective. So just to take a moment to reflect, think about what ways do you currently engage students in your school mental health efforts or just in your school community, period. And what steps can you take to enhance student engagement? So the concept of family engagement that we've been describing here, and one that's been shown to be most effective, represents a real shift from traditional concepts, captured also in the continuum we reflected on earlier with earlier in the slides. The shift can be described as one from a more restrictive family involvement to collaborative family engagement. So, a shift from notions of individual or very separate responsibilities of family to school into a shared responsibility and partnership with families and schools. A shift from focusing on family deficits to family strengths. We talked about that a little bit earlier. A shift from family involvement being random or isolated to activities or simply add-ons to a more systematic school or district-wide practices that are integrated and sustained with a purposeful connection for the learning and well-being for our school community. And finally, it's another shift from expecting more compliance from families to enabling families to take ownership of their role as partners and as key contributors of student success in both academics and in the social emotional arena. With this shift comes room for continuous improvement. It's not, an overnight fix, and it takes time to really develop those systems. But and that goes for parents and with schools as well. All right. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about some barriers to school and family partnerships that I imagine many of you have faced or are facing and have been working to overcome. So this isn't an exclusive list, but I do find it useful because it breaks down barriers into three domains: family, teacher, and equity or accessibility barriers. Some family barriers include facing just trying to identify priorities and time and energy, right? There may be work for a family obligations that make taking part in school or learning a real challenge for some families. Feeling discouraged or unwelcome to participate in learning, and this may stem from current school practices or approaches from or previous experiences with schools or the larger community or society. Having a mindset that learning and education are the school's responsibility, and families and teachers carry this mindset that may be shifted with clear messaging and consistent, inclusive, collaborative practices within schools and districts. Parents may also lack confidence on their own or in their own ability to support learning. Sometimes parents don't feel that they have the background or the capacity to help their children in school, whether academically or supporting their social emotional well-being. Teacher barriers can include difficulties in balancing competing priorities and other work responsibilities, and challenges in achieving that healthy work-life balance, especially in schools or districts that don't create infrastructures to support teachers and making effective engagement with families. Teachers can feel discouraged as well by the lack of family involvement despite attempts made, and sometimes it's difficult not to take some of that personally. There are access and equity barriers also that can get in the way of effective family engagement, and some of those include language barriers, implicit and explicit biases that are related to race, ethnicity, class, or other marginalized characteristics. There also might be accessibility challenges related to technology or some other factor. And again, this isn't an exhaustive list, but it just highlights some of the common barriers to family engagement. So, here are just some basic principles and best practices for effective family engagement. First, it starts with connection and relationship. This is the foundation, and mentioned before, it's the process of building trust with families. It really can take time, so be patient. Also, commitment to family engagement needs to be fully supported by leadership and widely communicated to the school and the school community as a core value. Family engagement efforts are purposeful, intentional, and they need to be clearly identified and talk about what the expected outcomes are. This takes planning. Family engagement and supported partners in their child's education. Families are engaged and supported partners in their child's education, mental health, and well-being, and the whole school succeeds. Partnering can occur at the level of the student or include student or district-wide teaming efforts. Family engagement efforts are tailored to address all families, to support all students, and tailoring family engagement includes seeking to see what the barriers are and making sure that we're making a sincere attempt to remove them. And lastly, um, positive learning environments contribute to family engagement and learning, and safe and supportive environments benefit families, students, and staff. So we're going to shift a little bit now to discuss ways in which family engagement can be practiced through a trauma-informed lens. And this lens is particularly relevant as school communities continue to lingering impacts of COVID, community level violence, economic hardship, and other traumatic events and stressors at both the collective and individual levels that significantly impact students and families' functioning and engagement. So let's talk about what is a trauma-informed school. A trauma-informed approach to family engagement ideally involves a broader school-wide effort where educators and administrators infuse and sustain trauma awareness, knowledge and skills into their school climate. Um, and through collaborative processes, including families and efforts to make sure that the efforts are made to maximize physical and psychological safety, facilitate recovery and or adjustment of child and family, and support the ability to learn and thrive. So we have some principles of trauma-informed approaches. There are six key principles that are fundamental to a trauma-informed approach, and can serve as a framework for considering strategies for engaging families and other caregivers. And these principles are safety, trustworthiness and transparency, peer support, collaboration, and mutually empowering voice and choice, cultural, historical, and gender issues. And we'll review a few of them for family engagement as they directly relate to these principles. And these strategies may also reflect or tap into more than one principle. So we'll start with safety, which is a core element in engaging families and ensuring that children and families and other caregivers feel physically safe in school settings and during school-related encounters. Some strategies to creating safe spaces for families include taking steps to approach parents in a calm and compassionate way, making spaces for meeting with families warm and inviting, possibly engaging students and family in this effort to figure out, is there an appropriate meeting space or a neutral meeting space for families as opposed to the principal's office or the main office or conference room, or how can you make those spaces more welcoming for folks to come? Asking students and families directly about what helps them feel safe and comfortable, then asking, alone signals of caring and positive intention. Building and maintaining trustworthiness and transparency is also a building block. To build trust and transparency, we need to ensure that families can readily access school policies and procedures and processes. So many schools have parent portals on their websites, but make sure there are various ways to access materials and take opportunities to remind parents of where and how to access that information. It's important that we establish clear and consistent open patterns of communication. Ask parents for their preferred mode of communication and make sure there's a clear two-way process for that communication. Some folks use Dojo, some parents allow you to text them directly. You use phone lines and, those phone trees that they have sometimes, anything can work, but just ask what their preferences are. And then communicate family engagement as a district or school priority and establish a dedicated committee. As we discussed, family engagement has many benefits to students and to the school community, including school student mental health. And it needs to be a school-wide priority. And remember, it takes time to build trust and develop relationships. So peer support has been found to be a key vehicle for facilitating recovery healing. So promoting it in the school community can have a significant impact. Peer support can be fostered by sharing resources about parent and family workshops and support groups available in your immediate community. Offering a series of workshops and forums that engage families in and engage them in the planning process, working with parent groups like the PTA or whatever you call it in your district, to organize social events for parents and families to offer opportunities to connect. And then we'll talk about how families are more likely to engage when they feel that they're partners in the process, and they are, right? Not just feeling like it, but actually being a partner in the process. So when we prioritize partnering and collaboration among school staff, teachers, administrators, and families, that it feels more like a community and they're more likely to participate. Some ways to promote this collaboration are to include students and families in program and planning. I've said that before. And implementation for individual students. Ooh. And also at the school and district level. So sometimes we have district level teams that mimic what our teams are in the building, and they include community members as well. Incorporating families in the assessment and intervention process. Identifying and offering volunteer opportunities for families to support school communities. And this can be things like planning and helping out at events, as well as being a part of the comprehensive school mental health team. So trauma often results in feelings of powerlessness, and empowering families and offering a voice and choice is critical. It's important that we recognize and build on family strengths and resilience while supporting families' efforts to self-advocate for themselves. Some ways to include that are surveying and responding to feedback from families about their needs, interests, and concerns. Recognizing that families' strengths and resilience, and in doing so, embrace them as full partners and within the healing process if there has been some trauma or some wrong or some issue in the community that they require healing from. And create an on-site or an online parent resource center. I think that that's very important, right? And then we have our cultural and historical and gender issues is another critical focus of the trauma-informed approach, including incorporating policies and protocols and processes that are responsive to the racial, ethnic, and cultural needs of families is essential. Some of these strategies include ensuring that diverse members of the school community are represented in program planning and implementation efforts. And this may involve engaging in outreach activities to find out who's available or to see what, and to ensure that you're very familiar with your community. Increasing awareness of the role of cultural concepts in mental health and stigma and treatment seeking. And then establishing a process and a possible community partnership to ensure that programming and related materials are culturally appropriate and accessible for the families. And if there's not an expert in the house to do that, in-house to do that, then find somebody in the community that can assist you. And that helps with inclusivity and considering what your options are too. All right, and then this brings us to the importance of equitable family engagement. And this focuses on meaningful engagement activities and systems between schools and families that do not characterize or treat specific family groups as deficient in their level of engagement or approach to education. Authentic family and school partnerships can be powerful tool for addressing inequities in schools and communities. And a critical place to start is by taking time to understand the community and family that we serve. It's equally as important to take time to reflect upon and unpack some of the potential negative assumptions and biases that we might hold that might be impacting our efforts to connect and engage with families. So, doing some self reflection and really considering what our school culture looks like. And the role of culture can't be underestimated in efforts to increase family engagement in schools. So take time to consider the cultural demographics of your school and approach school mental health programming and assessment with a culturally sensitive lens. Explore and address the potential impacts of language barriers, differences in norms and values, including your own personal biases, differences in communication styles and educational backgrounds, family dynamics that may facilitate or intervene or interfere with school engagement, and cultural mistrust and stigma. Be sensitive to the fact that individuals and family from historically marginalized groups may not trust systems, including the school. They don't trust that they'll be protected and that they have their best interests at heart. So again, transparency, consistency, empowerment, and responsiveness towards families is very important. Cultural mistrust and stigma can also relate more specifically to the topic of mental health, substance use, and mental health treatment seeking. And that may vary by culture and community. So those are other things to really, really consider. So here's some principles around the concept of cultural safety, and the 5 principles shown here align well with a trauma-informed approach. Cultural safety asks, how did a student or family experience an encounter in the terms of being respected and assisted in having their cultural location, values, and preferences taken into account? So, how do people feel valued? Are people being seen? And how are they being seen in the lens of an exchange that happens in the school or in the immediate community that may impact how they engage? As mentioned, many people who have been marginalized or discriminated against in our communities have experienced their cultural identity, beliefs, and lifestyles denigrated by the larger society. And these experiences can translate into a profound lack of trust and reluctance to fully engage with schools. The Early Childhood Development Intercultural Partnerships Program developed these guidelines to increase experiences of cultural safety, which can be applied to all grade levels and students and families. The first one is protocols. So find out about cultural forms of engagement and respect these in protocols with families. Personal knowledge. Become mindful of one's own cultural identity, attitudes, and beliefs, not only regarding cultural and bias, but mental health and well-being. And sharing information about yourself in appropriate ways can also help create equity and trust. And it goes back to being transparent, right? um, Partnerships. Again, these are the key elements of promoting collaborative practices and teaming, welcoming a joint problem-solving approach and treating families as experts in their own right can contribute to critical knowledge and know-how. Families know best. They know their family best. They know their culture best. They typically know their children best. So how do we make sure that we value what they're providing for us as information to guide our decision making and making sure that they are part of this decision making process? And then positive purpose. Lastly, that we're ensuring that there is a good probability that positive steps to achieve goals or to resolve problems can be taken, and that these are likely to be very beneficial for the family as well as for the school community. So let's take a quick look for how family engagement fits into the MTSS framework as described earlier. So here we have all three tiers. Tier 1 offers universal supports in green, intended for all families. Tier 2 provides selective supports for families that have higher needs or have some at-risk students. And Tier 3 provides intensive support for families for the highest needs of students. So some examples of tier family engagement include family workshops or seminars or surveys or screeners at tier 1 that's intended for your entire school population. At tier 2, group interventions involving families of at-risk youth. That could be, again, I think I mentioned earlier, check in, check out, or some other type of mentoring protocols. Um, and then at tier 3, individualized family counseling and community-based support. So those are just some ways that we can identify them through the MTSS tiering structure. So let's take a minute and just consider, what are some of the ways your school can or currently incorporates trauma-informed and culturally responsive approaches to family engagement? What are some of the examples within your school of family engagement at each tier? So if you could think about those things in a broader context, and then you can have your own takeaways. Okay, so now I'm going to bring together the concepts, principles, and guidelines I've introduced, and we're going to watch a quick video that provides some examples of effective family engagement, and then we will return. So hang on.
As we work to help every child succeed and to close gaps in student achievement, we often assume school is the main place that learning is going to happen. Take Esma. It used to seem to her family and her educators that Esma is always at school. Not true, it turns out. Esma and other students actually spend 82% of their waking hours at home or in their community. All those weekends, weeknights, and breaks add up. When they realized that, the educators in Esma's school district decided to work harder on making the most of the biggest partner in her learning life, her family. This can look different in every school, but for Esma's teacher, it means instead of spending his time arranging a traditional open house, he organizes grade-level parent meetings. Here, Esma's family saw data on how the class is doing in math, reading, social and emotional learning. They practiced new ways to help Esma at home and set goals for how they'll help her improve. Everyone learned from each other as the group talked about how to help the students. Also, near the start of the school year, some staff from Esma's school visited her home. They looked for the assets her family members can bring to the educational process. They learned about their languages, their culture, their lives, their world. Grandpa offered to be a resource for other English learner families, and the school also listened and learned from the family's perspective on Esma's needs. They learned how mom helps her calm down and focus. This kind of family engagement also makes it easier for the district to develop individualized education programs for students, including those in special education. The foundation is already there for families to engage in their students' academic and career planning too, making that more effective. Throughout the year, the family can attend workshops at the school on things like mental health, homework, or career exploration. Esma's mom saw those meetings on a poster in her work break room, and now she's inviting other parent friends to go with her. Esma's school district works with local businesses, places of worship, the public library, and other partners to reach students and families where they're already spending time. The school provides information frequently in a variety of ways so they can reach every family. Text messages are offered in the most common languages of local families. Esma's family gets photos from her teachers so they know what she's doing during the day. Communication between the school and the family is a group effort focused on helping Esma achieve her learning goals. When Esma wasn't sure what to do on a science assignment, her family knew to contact the teacher for a little clarification. Educators take a positive approach as they look for solutions to any challenges experienced on either side. They're always looking for the family's strengths. Also, when mom mentions that Esma has trouble making friends, the teacher knows to refer her to the school counselor. The counselor then helps the family join a local boys and girls club with lots of activities for Esma. The teacher knew to do this because the school counselor led staff trainings on resources available in the community and how to help families access them. There's no danger of a family like Esma's ever feeling like an occasional onlooker. The school knows what families have to offer, and the family knows what's going on in the classroom and how to support it. They feel they are active and regular collaborators and decision makers. The district gives families opportunities to learn how to help children succeed at each level of the school system and to serve on school groups. At school gatherings, Esma's adult stepsister and close next door neighbor also feel included in the community. Staff at the school are trained to be as inclusive as possible, welcoming as learning partners anyone who cares about the child. Esma's school has moved from parent involvement to family engagement. Not surprisingly, engaged families help students learn better. Staff members like their jobs better. Everyone wins. This is backed up by over 40 years of research. Students with engaged families, no matter their income, background, or culture, are more likely to do well in school, enroll in ambitious courses, graduate, and go on to post-secondary education. They also have stronger social skills and fewer disciplinary issues. So how do we make it happen? First, we work to make the shift across an entire school district. Sure, at the elementary level, Esma's classroom teacher is the main person her family interacts with at school. But as she gets older and her schooling more complex, collaboration is definitely bigger than one person. Really, all along the way, the family's interactions with pretty much everyone in connection with the school, from office staff to after-school staff, from bus drivers to principals, will need to be positive for them to truly feel welcomed. So it's a clear expectation in the district. Every employee has a role in helping every family feel connected to their child's learning, no matter what building or classroom that child attends. In Esma's district, a broad team that included school psychologists, social workers, counselors, families, general and special educators, and after-school program staff helped everyone in the school take family engagement to this next level in a way that works for their community. It worked. Esma's family feels like a valued member of the team. Esma, her family, and her educators feel confident that she is learning and happy at school. We have more information about how schools and families can effectively engage with each other around students' learning on our website.
All right. So now we'll transition a little bit and talk about school and community partnerships. So, when we think about I would like for you to think about, what comes into mind when you think of a school or community partner? So, and also consider if you have a general understanding regarding the complementary roles between schools and community partnerships within the context of MTSS, and I'll talk about that a little bit shortly. So, what are school and community partnerships? We have this definition here that details the collaborative relationship between groups of augmented services within your school and links to student support in the community. But let's maybe expand on this by breaking down each specific term included in the school community partnership. So, school, this one is obvious. The school is a K-12 institution, maybe even pre-K for some. The community is, when we hear community, is sort of a broad term. We are each a part of multiple types of community. So it can be geographic location, like your neighborhood, your town, your state. It also includes group associations as well. So think about the cultural groups and religious groups. But when we're looking here for specifically are resources within those communities. So agencies, organizations, facilities, businesses, civic groups, etc. And then as we define partnership, we're developing an agreement to share resources to accomplish a shared vision. So in terms of school mental health, this oftentimes is providing services to students, staff, or others in the community to support the well-being of those individuals. One thing to keep in mind here is that this partnership is mutually beneficial. You are receiving a service, but you're also benefiting the partner in some capacity, whether it's allowing them to fulfill their mission or vision, or having access to the population that they're serving. Or sometimes we know schools pay for some of these partnerships as well, but it depends on, what your funding sources are like. Some examples are an agreement with an organization to provide counseling services to students in the school setting, providing training to teachers or staff on social emotional learning practices, or having trauma-informed spaces. And it can also include the sharing of facilities or space. So oftentimes when we think of community partners for school mental health, we think about organizations or agencies that can provide therapeutic services, and those community health organizations, right? But this is a common and really helpful and important type of community partnership. There's a large range of entities in the community beyond agencies and organizations that can support your work. This includes businesses, post-secondary institutions, religious and civic groups, parks, libraries. There are a bunch of different kind of partnerships. We don't want to limit ourselves to only thinking about organizations that provide direct mental health or behavior support to school buildings. The wider a net we cast, the more opportunity there is for support. And there can also help ensure more community buy-in. And when we have a diverse group of community partners at the table with us, we are more likely to get the best understanding of the needs of our school community. Because while schools are one of the largest organizations within our communities, and have really good pulse on the needs, having diverse types of organizations working in tandem with us helps develop an even more clear picture of the community and its needs because we have more diverse perspective at the table. So why are school community partnerships? Students receive a full continuum of services, programming fills in the gaps, and it helps schools move towards a collaborative school-based mental health services model. So although most of the focus is on academics, it's important to advance student success. So attention to social, emotional, and behavior factors are really critical to student functioning. All students can benefit academically and socially when their classroom and school environments are positive, preventative, and responsive. Integrating mental health interventions into a multi-tiered systems of educational, social, emotional, and behavior supports has the potential to contribute to positive learning environments for all students, especially those who display significant risk for mental health difficulties. When partnering with school and community organizations, schools are better equipped to provide students with a full continuum of services. And because we have additional expertise and more hands on deck to provide supports, creating more efficiency, and allows us an ability to prioritize the needs of students within that continuum. Programming with community partners also emphasizes shared responsibility to fill in the gaps and ensure students don't fall through the cracks. And a strong connection between schools and community agencies helps schools move forward or move toward collaborative school-based mental health services model that ensures a wraparound of services are provided to support the whole child and their family. So let's take a quick look at our MTSS triangle. And when we think of community partnerships, it can be really helpful to think of it through the lens of MTSS and how these roles of the community partners and the school are actually very complementary and a good natural fit to work together. So at each tier, the school and the partners have different resources and roles that can support one another. The allocation of roles and responsibilities for school and community employee personnel across the multi-tier system of support, it generally is as follows. So for tier one, again, implemented primarily by school employed mental health professionals and other relevant specialized instructional support, school nurses is an example, with some support from community professionals. At tier two, interventions are implemented by both school employed mental health professionals and other relevant specialized instructional support personnel and community professionals. And at tier three, it's implemented primarily by community professionals with the support from school employed mental health professionals and other relevant specialized instructional support personnel. So how does this look in practice? At tier one, community partners can support through training of all school staff and families in mental health literacy. They can host school-wide assemblies, offer spaces that can be utilized for, schools can offer spaces where these providers can utilize space or host their programs. Churches, for example, work around character education or character building and reinforce school-wide expectations or mentor programs for all. At tier two, again, it's our early intervention. Community partners can help with adult mentoring, run small groups in the school setting or out of the school setting if that is a consideration. This can also look like training on all of these topics for school paid staff, a church mentoring program, or a perform care mentoring. And at tier three, of course, includes referrals to outside agencies. And it's always a good idea to continue to work collaboratively with those partners as they service our students. In some cases, this individualized support may be offered inside the school setting if you have a partnership that looks like that. And some schools contract with partners to have full-time staff in the building, and some come on a couple days a week. So the caveat is that these are examples, but they don't have to be unique or specific to these particular tiers. It's the function that they serve, not the type of community partner. So as you maybe do an inventory of what is available in your school and do maybe like a resource bank, you can figure out how those things align with your tiers and align with your school community preferences and make sure that there's still a viable resource for you. I think I'll touch about that a little bit later too. So as we begin to develop community partnerships, it's helpful to consider a few key components. So we won't be able to work through all of these in today's session, but I want to make sure that the components are on your radar when you're thinking about community partnerships, new or old, or even doing an inventory of what you have currently. So today we'll talk about developing a comprehensive mental health team that integrates community partners, keeping community partners in the front when we are conducting needs assessments and resource mapping as a part of the framework development, ensuring to establish clear expectations and a shared accountability for a successful relationship that can be formed in a memorandum of understanding or whatever the contract is that you develop with your partner. And finally, how to develop a plan for sustainability over the long term to ensure the longevity of services and supports for students. So maybe you have purchased some things with a grant or developed a partnership that is grant funded. How will you maintain those when the grant funds are gone? What will that look like? How will you sustain the supports for the student, or will it morph into something else? So one of the first main steps and when you're developing community partnerships is the development of your comprehensive school mental health team, right? Your team, its makeup, vision, and practices are the foundation of your school mental health system, which includes community partnerships. So if your teaming is strong and you have a much higher likelihood to be successful across the board. So let's take a step back and zoom out a little bit and talk about best practices for team development. So to start, let's get a basic understanding of what teaming in schools looks like. So you may be familiar with various teams that exist in your school already. Think of grade level teams, special education teams, or INRS teams. When implemented in comprehensive school mental health, developing a designated and unique school mental health team helps achieve the goal of providing a continuum of services and helps ensure the successful implementation of programs and systems that make comprehensive school mental health successful. This is a team of interdisciplinary school and community stakeholders. They meet regularly, they make database decisions, and they lead the action planning and implementation of program support to support mental health in the school setting. So this team is on the front lines of implementation efforts around how to support everybody on a continuum of the MTSS triangle. With the heavy workload of everyone in the building, because we're all spent, right? We find that staff is working diligently to complete their own tasks, but in silos, which can lead to duplicative work and inefficiencies. So team supports collaboration and addresses the problems of siloed work, supporting efficiency and maximizing the efforts of individuals within the team. Our school communities are made up of diverse stakeholders, all of which have an important voice in developing the vision, priorities of comprehensive school mental health. And this diversity helps create a full picture, helping to ensure that the initiatives meet the needs of the community. So there are benefits of utilizing multidisciplinary collaborative teaming efforts. And some of those include teaming that provides additional resources and supports are especially seen when collaborating with community partners who can bring new ideas, resources, and notably can be helpful in implementing new evidence-based practices. When utilizing multidisciplinary teams, we're harnessing diverse experiences and expertise that create a more holistic dialogue between team members. And this diversity and discipline, experiences, and knowledge allows teams to fill in gaps in services, which is seen to increase in offering of services to our school and to our community. To this end, a 2022 study of the level of multidisciplinary diversity increased services provisions in school. Schools are also available to offer more services to students despite funding limitations to some extent through community partnership and involvement. Since teaming is also encourages service provision across all tiers, preventative services allow for improved and accurate referrals for students who need them, reducing the work at higher tiers. So you know, if you have an upside down triangle and you're servicing more children that have more intense needs, this will help, you know, decrease that, because they'll hopefully the partnerships that you create will have some prevention services tied to them. And also, when you're involving representatives from the spaces in which services and supports are provided, from the classroom, the counseling offices, central office, and home and community, it's more likely that we'll see consistency in services and reduce fragmentation. And this consistency is key when implementing mental health with youth. So before I close, I would like for you to pause for reflection and think about, what are some of the examples of school and community partnerships at each tier? And in what ways do you or can you involve community partners in your school mental health learning process?
All right. Are you finished up, Tania?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to close. I don't think we have time to cover the rest of the slides.
Okay. Well, thanks, Tania, for the wonderful presentation. Very informative and great information to take
Thank
home on
you.
how to involve those families. So in the chat, I just put some information about if anyone has any additional follow-up questions, how to find the recordings, and also put a link in the chat on if you could take a brief survey on the session today. Tania, I'm not sure if you're hanging out, but if anyone has any questions for Tania, I'd like to offer the opportunity now.
Any questions or concerns? Oh, I see. I'll check the chat.
It looks like we have some big thank yous and applauses in the chat.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Well, if there's no additional questions or thoughts or concerns or comments or anything like that, thank you, Tania. One presentation, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the conference today.
Thank you. I'll see you shortly. I think we're going to lunch now.
I believe so, yes.
All right. I'll see you guys back for the next session.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.